Hi everyone, this is Logan here again. Welcome back to the channel. I was just going to do a video looking at the processing I've done on a recent target I imaged, and that's the Omega Nebula, also known as the Swan Nebula, Horseshoe Nebula, Checkmark Nebula, Lobster Nebula, M17. I don't know of another nebula with so many names as this one. I'm not sure why it's got so many, but anyway. Now it's not that far from the Eagle Nebula, which is here, M16, and to be honest with you, I hadn't really been too fussed about imaging it. I probably hadn't spent enough time looking at it and looking at other images of it until I saw a video by OIII of OIII's Astro, and he had his new Newtonian telescope and he imaged the Omega Nebula, and the image at the end I thought looked fantastic, and to me it felt like really looking into this sort of amazing, interesting ice sculpture. You should check out his video because I just really liked the target image at the end. I just thought it was really well done. So I thought, maybe I should not let this pass by and quickly try and get some data on it before it disappears for the year. Now, by the time I got to it, it was already heading towards the horizon each night, so it was kind of past its best. But I still managed to get 7 hours and 20 minutes of HAS2 and OIII, and then decided to go ahead and process that and see what I had. So this is what I captured. This was the HA. And you can see the center is pretty bright, and there's not a lot of detail in here, and the S2 does have a little bit more detail in the center, which is quite nice, and the OIII is again very bright in the center of the nebula. These have been denoised and stretched. So I combined those with the LRGB tool to just step back a few steps here to this, and you can see there was a fair bit of magenta in the background, and some of the stars are a bit magenta looking. So I just used the, if we go into script utilities, I just use the correct magenta stars. Basically what that does is the same thing as inverting it, doing an SCNRD green and then inverting it back again. So this just does it in one hit kind of for you. So, but if you go through the steps, it retains these steps as you go backwards and forwards. So you can see this is the inversion, and you can see how a lot of the stars are green, and there's a sort of a slight green tinge to the background. It applies an SCNR to remove some of the green, and then it inverts it back again, and you end up with this, where the stars now are much more a mixture of sort of white. There's not a lot of blue, unfortunately, but white and sort of slightly yellowy looking stars. And then I actually just use the SCNR set to green and remove some of the green to get this look. Now I actually processed this a couple of times. The first time I processed this, I saved this as a TIFF and took it into Photoshop and used Star Exterminator to remove the stars, which it did a good job of. The only thing is, if we just zoom in here a bit, around these very bright stars there is a sort of a slightly yellowy tan halo around here, and around here as well, the star. And when it actually did the Star Exterminator, it kind of left that halo behind. And what ended up happening was that when I processed it further, I ended up with this sort of look up here with these stars, where we got this sort of artifact, slightly sort of tan look area, which really shouldn't be there. It's like a bit of tan nebulosity, which really shouldn't be there, and it was related to the sort of halo around the stars. This area here, the colour blends in with the rest of the nebulosity around here, but it was still a bit odd looking. So what I ended up doing was I made using the game script. So under script, I think you've got to get this as a separate plugin. Utilities, and under game, I made a custom mask here, where I just picked out some of the bigger stars to put a mask around those, and then I did some star reduction to make them smaller before then saving it as a TIFF and taking it into Photoshop to do Star Exterminator, and that worked a lot better because when I this is the Star Exterminator, and as you can see there is none of that light tan area around here, and it's hard to see. I think this is where the other star is, but it's you know, nowhere near as pronounced. And these are the stars that I got from going through the process that Star Exterminator outlines in Photoshop to get your star mask. So yeah, then it was a matter of doing the colour masks. So this was a green colour mask. This was a yellow one, slightly different to the green. And this was the cyan one, which actually, the way I had done it, actually seemed to pick up quite a lot of cyan, maybe more than it should have, I don't know. But I went with this colour mask anyway, and then did some curves. If we step through, this is actually interesting. This is doing a background neutralization, and in fact it seemed to throw a bit more of the green back in, which I then sort of removed a bit more of it again. And then just stepping through, there's some extra cyan, just sort of worked on that one, and then you can see the colours coming through here to sort of get more of a colourful image. And so I put that aside, and then it was time to work on the luminance. Now with the luminance, I initially took the HA straight into Photoshop, and I did Star Exterminator on it, removed the stars, and I ended up with this, which looked great. The only problem was that when I was going through doing my processing, because I like to do a bit of HDR, multi-scale transform, some local histogram equalization, and then I use the multi-scale linear transform setup for increasing sharpness using, I often have this set at 0.1, but you usually have to reduce this down to 0.75 or 0.5 because it overdoes it a little bit and can start to damage the image a little bit. But usually also with a range mask around here, just to protect the background here, so that we're not sort of sharpening or increasing noise, etc. around through the background here. The one problem doing it this way was that whilst it did a great job of removing the stars, when I actually applied, I'll just move in a bit closer, when I applied the HDR multi-scale transform tool to try and bring out the detail in here, if I just step forward, you can see it brought out the detail in the nebulosity, but it left me with this sort of funny crosshatch appearance, a bit like you see around stars with StarNet. And at first I was thinking, well, what am I going to do about this? This is kind of a bit disappointing. I'm trying to avoid this waffle iron look to areas, and it only seemed to be there if I went and did Star Exterminator and then brought it back in here and applied the HDR to it. So what I ended up doing was I got the luminance, and I applied, with the stars still present, I applied my HDR to it first to bring out some of this detail. Then I took it into Photoshop and did the Star Exterminator, sorry, and now I didn't have that crosshatch appearance anymore. I just had the nice detail of the nebulosity. So that seemed to work quite well, but I had to apply it first and then remove the stars. So then this had some local histogram equalization applied to it, and also a bit of sharpening using using this tool here with these settings. And then it was a matter of applying that back to the color image, which is this one here. So the luminance and the color put together to give the detail and the nice color. And then with the stars, this was the original stars that I got from Star Exterminator, and I just pulled back on the curves a bit, did a bit of star size reduction and increased the saturation, and with Pixel Math combined that with the color and luminance image to give this one here as my final image. Now, believe it or not, I did pull back on the saturation a bit because I thought the original was a bit oversaturated, but anyway, you can let me know what you think in the comments, whether it's too much color, not colorful enough. I kind of quite liked it. It had some variation in color here with the different structures of the nebula. Yeah, and if there's any other questions about anything I've done in the processing, feel free to leave a question. I'll try and answer it as best I can, and otherwise I'll see you in the next video.